Hey all, so this is going to be a guide to Storm Pyramid X, who in my opinion is one of the coolest characters in this game that never really got a chance. What I mean by that is that she introduced some pretty interesting and unique pieces of utility that were overshadowed almost immediately by other characters that came to the game soon after her. And in her case, the big one that we have to talk about is Apocalypse. I'm not going to try and convince you in this guide that she is an absolute top tier mutant, but I think that she has been significantly underrated because so many people reach for Apocalypse over her and are just in that habit, so she kind of gets overlooked. So, if you like the character, if you're willing to like the character, if you're trying to figure out what's there, or maybe you've already ranked her up for defense but you never use her, we're going to go over why I consider her a valuable and fun addition to my own roster. So, the basics here, she deals energy damage instead of physical. This means that she gets around physical resistance, which seems obvious, but there are also some champions with negative energy resistance. She'll do more there. One of them in particular is Korg, and energy attacks also don't trigger his thorns, so she's one of the best Korg counters in the game. It also just interacts with certain other nodes and abilities, and you want a mix of champions on your team who do both energy and physical damage. She also has that 1400 energy resistance. That doesn't look like a lot, but remember that energy resistance is one of the many stats of this game subject to diminishing returns, and so the first 1000 points of it is actually more important than the next 1000 points, and this is pretty significant. Without looking it up, I'd say that in most matchups, I believe this is roughly a 30% reduction. And so that would apply to everything from the damage over time ticks of Incinerate debuffs on her, to high ground damage when she blocks, and just other champions that also do energy damage. Like, again, in a mirror matchup, she has a 30% resistance to her own incoming damage, which can be pretty nice. And then this last ability here, which was completely unique to her when she was released, is that when an opponent purifies a stun debuff, she replaces it with a longer passive stun. This is good in general for getting you openings, and unlike, Bishop now has this ability just against skill champions, Storms also applies to when non-skill champions are granted a Purify by a node such as Tenacity or Masochism. So it's very broad and very powerful, and the fact that it is replaced with a longer stun that starts when the Purify occurs means that against Purification champions you can sometimes get in longer combos, or you can get in very long heavy charges, which is also important to her. So her other core piece of utility here are her Tempests. Now, if you do nothing in the pre-fight screen, she will have the Ice Tempest up all the time. This is the one that you're used to seeing when she's a defender. It grants her immunity to Cold Snap and Frostbite, which can be very nice, makes her good for energy adoption lanes for ice, but it doesn't come up all that often. But that glancing there is normally what annoys people about her as a defender. It only applies to basic attacks, but it's a 60% chance to apply even on blocked hits. And a reminder, what glancing means is that those attacks cannot be critical. On top of that, they deal 50% reduced damage, and they have a minus 100% ability accuracy. So certain things can get around that ability accuracy reduction, but most of the time it just means their abilities can't trigger. So this means that she has some ability to stop things when she's blocking. It also means that if you mess up and get tagged with her, you're much less likely to die both to the hits and to any knock-on effects that would normally come with them. Because of this, I normally leave the Ice Tempest up as the default, because, if I mess up, I prefer not to die. But this other one, the Lightning Tempest, that you can turn on, makes you functionally immune to shock effects. Now, Enhanced Shock will get around this, because notice it says decrease potency. But overall that's a good thing because this applies to passives as well as active debuffs. This works on EMP modification. And if they are debuffs, then you'll actually be healing from them because of willpower. Because it doesn't make you immune to them, it just means they don't hurt you. And then you also have this, she has up to a 16% chance to stun the opponent on every hit. It requires a bit of practice and or better reflexes than mine to reliably take advantage of this because it's a somewhat short stun. But if you're paying attention to it and if you're keeping your prowess up, this can allow you to do some very long combos and it lets you stay very aggressive. Just watch for effects where you don't actually want to stun the opponent like one eye open. Now, funnily enough, in certain instances, like against Black Panther Civil War, this can work in your favor because you'll stun Black Panther and then he'll purify the stun and stun you, but then you will apply the passive stun because he purified the stun and you will break out of yours before him and be able to attack into him. But just be ready for that beforehand. And then a note here, when power locked or drained, you lose both Tempests, so be careful taking Storm into something like a Plagued Mind node, or maybe something that has power lock 1 or 2. Be very careful with that because you may lose all of the abilities you're relying on all of a sudden, and then you have to wait 8 whole seconds for them to come back. This next bit is almost purely defensive. If you do happen to get knocked down, which means you got hit by a heavy or a special, so don't recommend it, you get the benefit of both Tempests. Cool. Not going to happen too much. But then Prowess, another one of her core mechanics. Whenever either champion gains a bar of power, then she gains 1 Prowess per Tempest. So if you happen to have both Tempests active, then every bar of power gives you 2. And what this means is that if you are close to a bar of power and your opponent is close to a bar of power and you both cross, you can go from 0 prowess to 4 very quickly. And like it says, the first 3 are permanent and then additional ones last 10 seconds. And then we have here, if she has 6 prowess effects, so this also counts passives, whatever source you get them from, active during her special attack, then she gets that nice little unblockable. 1.8 seconds isn't that long, but given the range on her special attacks, it's usually long enough for something to hit, and then the rest of them will hit them anyway. Now, the reason that you may want that unblockable is because when you are using a heavy attack, you create that dormant prowess, which charges from 0 to 100%. Now, there's no real benefit to just creating this and then holding on to it, but when you cancel into a special attack from your heavy, like it says, when you launch a special attack while you are actively charging the heavy, then that dormant prowess becomes a passive prowess and can increase special attack damage by up to 100%. That can be quite nice, and it also counts towards that unblockable. So what this means is that if you have 5 active prowess buffs that you picked up from you or the opponent gaining power, and then you cancel a heavy into a special, you have 6 total effects, you go unblockable. It makes it safer to charge that heavy and get the extra damage on the special. So now onto her specials themselves. The special 1 always inflicts a passive slow regardless of whether you have a Tempest up or not. This is only for the duration of the special attack, so it may not be immediately obvious how useful this is, but one big thing it means is that in addition to it probably being unblockable, it cannot be evaded unless you're facing Ultron. It can also be safely thrown into unstoppable effects, which can be great if you're facing like Aspect of War or maybe a Juggernaut, anything along those lines. And it stops any unstoppable effect from triggering during the animation of the special 1. I have a solo with Storm of the Summer of Pain Rogue that relies on that exact tactic to get around the Brawl node. And then if you have the Ice Tempest active, which again is the default, Then each hit will generate an additional prowess. They're not very strong, but it basically means when you have the Ice Tempest up, you're going to do more and more damage as the special attack goes on. And then you get this really nice passive Cold Snap over the course of 14 seconds. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but remember that Cold Snap completely shuts off evasion effects. It's not ability accuracy reduction, it's not slow, so Ultron isn't immune to it. It just turns off evades unless you're specifically taking someone immune to Cold Snap. And because both that and the slow are passive, can't be purified. Again, either by skill champions who often have those abilities, or by nodes like Masochism or Tenacity. So then the special attack 2 inflicts those shocks. They don't deal a ton of damage, but remember that this will scale with prowess, so it's not bad. And then if the opponent purifies any of these shock debuffs, again, specifically targeting nodes like Tenacity or any skill champion with Purify, then you get the full damage of the shock right away. I love that particular line because it just means that that shock damage is happening one way or another unless they're flat out immune to it. For the Lightning Tempest, you get up to 90% more shock damage, so just, the special 1 does more damage when you're in the Ice Tempest, the special 2 does more damage when you're in the Lightning Tempest. And then you can also afford to be more aggressive in the Lightning Tempest, because as long as you have a few prowess up, then the opponent doesn't gain as much power from being hit by it. Now, it can't invert the power rate, but basically this means that if your opponent is at 2.9 bars of power, and you throw a special 2 into them with 4 or more prowess, they will stay at 2.9 bars of power and not go red. So this can let her floor it a little bit and be more aggressive. And then we have the special 3 here, which you're normally going to be using in longer fights because it's the only way to activate her alternate Tempest without getting hit or without taking damage. And like it says, the duration of that Tempest is paused while charging heavy attacks or launching specials. Luckily, because she replaces purified stuns with longer passive stuns, Storm is usually pretty good at throwing a bunch of heavy attacks. And then, like it says, if you have made it back to the special 3 with both Tempests still active, or maybe if you got pushed red by getting knocked down and they're both active, then you get a huge attack bonus to the special, which remember will then scale with prowess, because attack rating and special attack damage are 2 separate axes. The attack rating goes up, and then prowess increases special attack damage, so this can just do a ton. I have a few videos that I'll show you of this doing pretty insane amounts of damage. And we won't spend too much time on her SIG ability because it is awful. I just really cannot stand this. Yes, it does allow you to have both of her Tempests up permanently, which is really nice, but you have to be at very low health to get it. Now, at SIG 200, it triggers at 30%, which if you're used to Nick Fury, okay, I can fight at 30%, except it has to be SIG 200. Nick has that cut off at SIG 1, and Nick also goes stun immune and hits way harder. I do not think this is worth it. I think she needs something else. If she ever gets updated, this is something that needs attention. It is not worth sinking any SIG stones into. I have pulled her more times than I wanted to. But if you ever find yourself about to die, maybe this will save you by helping you do more damage. Who knows? So going into her synergies, remember that Champions of Battleworld is a synergy that all 4 of these crossover champs have, and then each of them has the same benefit for themselves regardless of who else is on the team. For Storm, it's that opponent nullify effects are half as likely to work. I personally find this pretty useless because they're still going to work half the time, and then you're going to end up losing a lot of your prowesses. If you're in war, they're going to benefit from Mystic Dispersion. Not very good. However, the benefits for the other champions, especially Jabari getting almost another full second on stuns and Sorcerer starting with a bar of power, are very good. So if you have those champions, yay you. The Bishop synergy is great. Prowess buffs last 4 seconds longer? Cool. That's 50% longer for any of them over that cap of 3 that last forever. And that means that you're more likely to be able to throw a special with a bunch of prowess instead of a medium amount of prowess, and then you're going to kill things faster. Sweet. So the one with OG Storm is even better. It only applies to the alternate Tempests activated by her special 3, but it turns 35 seconds into 43 seconds, which is more than a 20% increase, makes it easier to generate a ton of prowess, makes it easier to get back up to the special 3 so you can throw it with the giant attack rating boost. Excellent. And then the one with the various Wakandans is awesome for them, does nothing for her. The Spider-Verse one, again, seems fine, but does nothing for her. And then she has that classic one, Mutant Agenda, where special attacks gain extra attack rating. And remember, like I said with her special 3, extra attack rating is better than extra special damage because it then further scales with special damage. Also notice this one is with Bishop as well, who has that other unique synergy with her, so having Bishop on the team is great for her. Triggers 2 good synergies. So this part is a little bit awkward because I think that her synergy with Apocalypse is actually her best synergy. The biggest flaw in Storm X's base kit is that her crit rate is awful. When she crits on her specials, it feels amazing and you will just delete the opponent. When she doesn't, she's pretty underwhelming. And the synergy with Apocalypse not only gives her access to another source of prowess. You have all of these ways to get passive prowess for each prowess buff that you already have. More special damage is exactly what she wants, and it just makes it that much easier for her to go unblockable. But if you make her a horseman, she also gets 30% extra crit rating, and all of her prowess are better, which just makes her damage output way more reliable. But to make her a horseman with Apocalypse, you have to win a fight with Apocalypse first, which means you already have a usable Apocalypse who can handle some of the same I don't want my opponent to purify my effects fights that you might be using Storm for. Now, she still has unique immunities. She still does damage in other ways than he does. She's still a better Korg counter because she does energy damage on basics. He does not. There are places where she's better, but this is what I was alluding to at the beginning of this guide, which is that while I enjoy her quite a bit, it's not always worth it to smaller accounts to invest in her, because to get the most out of her kind of requires training her replacement, if that makes sense. I still think she's worth having, but this is why you probably should think twice before ranking her if resources are still very precious to you. This is her special synergy with Professor X. Makes all of her prowesses last longer, which makes them easier to stack so you can throw a special with a bunch of them up, and it makes her shocks do more. I already said that her shocks don't do all that much damage, so that part doesn't really matter to me, but longer prowess and bigger specials is great. She's also one of the champions that triggers Howard the Duck's interesting special that kind of makes him a pseudo War Machine or Nimrod. Makes him one of only, I believe it's 3 champions in the game that can remove prowess effects. And she's one of the ways that he can get that. So that's quite nice. They can go together well there. But her side of the synergy is 12% prowess duration and potency. So they last longer, you can stack more of them, and then they're more effective so you hit harder. Excellent. So now to get into some fights, we're going to start with a really simple one. This is from Cavalier Event Quest a few months ago, Horseman Storm versus Korg. This is pretty ideal, but notice right away her glancing stopped Bubble Shield from happening. He purified the stun because of his SIG, and she turned it into a passive and was able to hit into him. And now she's able to build a ton of Furies. Her specials do so much damage, and no thorns at any point, even on her heavies, because all of them are energy and completely bypass that part of his kit. Now, the Furies are helping her there. Apocalypse is helping her with the crit rating, but you can see how fully she counters every part of Korg's kit. Okay, so this next one is a Hitmonkey boss with Life Cycle in 7.2. This is not as ideal for her because the lane that I was taking did not allow me to charge an Apocalypse, so this is no real synergies for her, no Horseman pre-fight, none of that. This is just her base kit. Now, it is life cycle, and these bosses have quite a bit of health, so I have sped it up a little bit, but you can still see what's going on here. Whenever he purifies the stun, which sometimes happens at the end of her heavy, because if she throws a heavy fast enough, then the original active stun will have not yet expired when he gets knocked down. He will then purify that active stun, and then you can hit into him again. And sometimes it's just because you've just knocked him down and he tries to purify a stun immediately on a parry. Either way, there are plenty of passive stuns in here from him purifying. Additionally, one of the things that makes Hitmonkey challenging here is that on life cycle nodes you have to knock down the opponent. And knocking down Hitmonkey not only gives him that purify that we already discussed, it also gives him a rather high evade chance, but we can safely throw our special one into that because of the passive slow, and then it applies the passive cold snap. Again, neither can be purified, and so we're able to turn off the evade for a fair chunk of this fight. This originally was about a 3-minute fight, so I'm not going to say that it's the fastest thing in the world, but I think this boss gave some people a fair amount of trouble, and for me this was the one that I chose to do 4 times. I only did the others once each, because this was so safe. Look, we've got him down under 10% now, and we're still over 90. I think this one I end up hitting into life cycle, and so he heals this time. Yeah, there we go. And then I was hoping to hit him here, but life cycle goes on cooldown again. But here we're able to take him down really low, and then he comes in, we parry it, he tries to purify it, we knock him down and finish the fight. And then we have one more here that really highlights her immunities. So this is a lane in 7-2 that has energy adoption, both ice and lightning, a rather unusual combination of debuffs. But as you can see, there's that dynamo node, which means that if the attacker has superiority, which on this lane requires them to be the same class as the defender, then being affected by those debuffs actually pauses their prowess buffs. And you can see how that would be helpful for Storm. So off the bat, we have to pick one of the 2 Tempests to start with, so we only actually get the benefit for one of those debuffs. Because we stuck to the Ice Tempest, we are just fully immune to Cold Snap. Those shocks are hurting us, but as you can see, they do little enough damage that it's not a big deal. But because they're applying to us and we're not getting rid of them, all of our prowess buffs are paused. Normally they start to expire after Storm passes 3, and all of them are fully paused. So now we're up to 7. We're going to try and charge this dormant prowess, release it to get the extra ones from the Apocalypse Synergy. I went ahead and tried to get, a better roll than 5. I should have just canceled that one directly into it, but either way, we have 13 prowess up right now, 8 active and 5 passive, and we did a pretty good chunk with that special 3. We did, 63,000 damage. That's not bad at all. But now what we're trying to do is build back up to the special 3 again. And remember that I'm throwing all of these heavies because while she is charging her heavy, that alternate Tempest is paused. Additionally, now that we've got another shock debuff on us, that 4th prowess is paused. So I'm trying to build the special 3 mainly with heavies to make sure that we don't lose the Tempest. Because remember, if that's still active when we get to the special 3, that's going to give us a really big attack rating, which is then going to be multiplied by all of our prowess. So notice right there I had 25 prowess buffs up, 13 passive ones from the Apocalypse Synergy, still not a horseman though, and 12 active ones that had been paused by the node. And as you can see, it did almost 200,000 damage thanks to that big attack increase that was then magnified by all the prowess. This is a fairly unique node, but it's one that doesn't have a ton of natural counters and really shows off the fact that her unique combination of immunities can come in handy. So, to recap, my point is not that I think Storm X is one of the best mutants in the game and that everybody who has her immediately needs to rank her. But I do think that she is a powerful champion with a complete kit that fits together well that would benefit quite a few rosters. I also find her very fun to play. So if any of the abilities that we've gone over in this guide sound like they answer challenges that you know your roster struggles with, or if any of these videos have seemed like a fun experience and you would enjoy playing this character, then I encourage you to find spaces to use her. Hopefully, you now have a deeper understanding of her abilities and you can think of more places where those abilities would come in handy. And hopefully, you walk away from this with another champion that you enjoy. Because, in my opinion, that really is one of the primary purposes of this game, for us to find as many champions in our rosters as possible that we enjoy using and find effective. I personally put Storm in that category, and I hope that maybe you do now too. Until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.